but even if you say, all right, I'd like to.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn in our ongoing Financial Friday series. Zanies is excited to offer these sessions in cooperation with our corporate partner, Equitable Advisors. Equitable has a long-standing presence in New York, and a large portion of Equitable's New York client base is built upon the work they do within the public education system. Through Equitable, Zanies members can receive competitive insurance rates and a full array of retirement services, including a complimentary financial profile for Zanies members, which we urge you to take advantage of because it's a great benefit. Our Equitable presenter today is Emmy Freeze. And before we get started, please note that participants are muted during the session, but we will have some Q&A time following the presentation. If you have a question, just type it either in the Q&A box or in the chat panel. We're also recording this session, and it'll be available at zanies.org within the next week. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Emmy.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I'm always excited to be able to come and speak to Zanies members, and I hope that everyone is having a wonderful summer so far. Today, we are going to talk about Financial Strategies 101, and the goal is to create a plan where you make the most of your money. Before we get into it, I do want to make sure we take some time to read this disclosure. Today's presentation is meant to be educational. It is not meant to be taken as tax or legal advice. And everyone's situation is unique. So we're going to be doing overarching financial concepts as far as actually taking the next step into making changes or creating a financial plan. Meet with a financial professional. You can meet with me. You can meet with somebody that you already know. But this is educational. It is not meant to talk about someone's specific financial plan. On today's agenda, we are going to start talking about the advantages of smart financial management. We are going to talk about overcoming obstacles, financial management components. This is where we get into more of the details of the different ways that you can make a financial plan. And then we're going to give some actionable items so that you can get started on your own sound financial plan. Let's start with the smart financial management advantages. A financial program is simply a map or game plan. It is the process of prioritizing the allocation of cash reserves to help you achieve your goals and dreams for the future. And managing your finances begins as early as with your first paycheck. You may notice money is automatically withheld or deducted to pay for things like federal or state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare. From there, what is left over is probably allocated to cover expenses. Think things like your mortgage, groceries, and other bills. Then you have a little bit left over to play with. You need to do fun things in your life. Go and see a movie, go and have a dinner. But then what do we do with what is left over from there? How many people know they are on track to where they need to be to fund something like a child's education, retirement, purchasing a new home? And how many feel they could do a little bit more to get to these goals? There are many advantages to setting up a financial program for yourself. I review mine every single year and tweak it every year. Because when you take an accurate inventory of your assets and your liabilities, and you start figuring out where your money goes, you create a roadmap for yourself towards your financial future. And what we want everyone to have is a sensible program, something that stretches us a little bit, but is still realistic. We need workable goals so that we can make the most of our money. And sometimes people find that there are so many choices, so much to do, and so many expenses that it's difficult to create a concise plan. Don't get bogged down by the details. Step back, regroup, create a plan. and this will help you stay focused on the bigger picture and make wiser short term choices to achieve our long term goals. Let's talk about a few obstacles to financial success, because if we don't have that solid base, then we're never going to have a sound financial plan. The first obstacle is expectations but no plan. You can improve your financial future simply by identifying a goal and then developing and implementing a financial program. We don't want to get in the car and just drive off because we don't know what our destination will be then. We need a roadmap. And sometimes a plan can seem very daunting, but meet with a financial professional. Everyone on this call is allowed to meet with me with no charge to themselves so we can start creating a financial profile and get everyone on a financial game plan. The next thing we need to talk about is consumer debt. And when I'm talking about consumer debt, I'm talking about credit cards. It feels really painless to swipe a credit card, but they play a major role in someone's ability to save. How quickly charges pile up is astounding. For example, a credit card balance of $3,000 at a 12% interest rate will take 92 payments or 7.7 years to pay off if you only make a minimum payment of $50 per month. And on that credit card, the interest alone is $1,558 over that 7.7 years. I'll also point out that the example I just gave you was a 12% interest payment. Typically, when we're talking about credit cards, we're getting closer to 20. There's different ways we can pay down credit card debt. We can talk about debt snowball versus debt avalanche. But some basic things to start with are stop charging on the card. If there's a lot of credit card debt, move to paying for more things in cash. And you can either start by paying off the highest interest rate credit card first, or the credit card with the lowest balance so that we feel like there's some success there. Another obstacle to financial success is inflation. And I used to have to answer a lot of questions about inflation for people, but the past year and a half happened, and now people really feel inflation. We can tell when we go into the grocery store that our eggs are more expensive. And inflation is what erodes our purchasing power over time because prices will go up over time. This is a big deal for employees with pensions because people retire, they have this really strong pension, and they don't realize that it does not keep up with inflation. Here we are seeing an example of inflation. $1 in 1913 had the same buying power as $29.92 in 2022. That is a significant difference, and we don't always feel inflation day in and day out, but over a long period of time, it really eats away at our ability to be financially successful. And then there's procrastination. The longer you wait to invest in your financial goals, the more you have to contribute in order to reach them. Saving for any goal, but especially for retirement, is like planting a tree. The best time to do it was 5 years ago. The second best time to do it is today. Time can be one of your biggest allies or one of your biggest enemies. And here we're actually going to look at an example of what we call the time value of money. In this example, we're assuming a hypothetical 7% annual return in someone's retirement account. And the first person we are going to talk about here is this 25-year-old who made a monthly contribution of $189 to their retirement account up until they turned 65. Their total contribution over this time, which was 40 years, was about $100,000. But with a hypothetical 7% rate of return, this person would have growth of $409,000, which would make their total ending value a $500,000 retirement account. Then we have someone who waited till age 50 and only has 15 years to save. They have to put in a much higher monthly contribution in order to reach that $500,000. This is not to say that it is ever too late to start saving for retirement. You can always save to learn to live on a little bit less. And this person who has a shorter time horizon still saw quite a bit of growth in their account. The purpose of talking about this is people think that these financial goals are really, really far away. But when it comes to how investing works and the market works, nothing is more important than time in the market. So even if you can just save a little bit today, that will make you much, much better in the future. I actually have a very good client who she was saving 10% of her paycheck. And then she went through a really nasty divorce and she wanted to go down to nothing because expenses piled up. Now they were living in two separate households. They had to pay for lawyers. And we had a conversation. We talked about rather than going down to nothing, let's just do $25 a pay period. And she did that for 2 years. And I had a meeting with her to review last week. And she was like, I'm so happy I didn't go down to $0 because the $25 I knew I was still in the market. And I absolutely loved that meeting because A, she listened to me, and B, she was grateful that she took the advice and went with it. The power of compounding returns is a very, very strong way to build wealth for yourself and for future generations. Now we need to ask ourselves, how do we get started? Because we need to start simple before we can get fancy. The first thing everyone needs to do is assess your current financial situation. Create a budget. And the fun thing about living in 2023 is there's lots of budgeting apps out there. Personally, I use Mint, but you could look up a dozen different budgeting apps, and most of them are free if you get the basic version. Having a budget allows you to know what your inflows and your outflows are. Are we accumulating credit card debt because we're spending too much on a lot of little things? Are we saving a bunch of money into cash and we just don't know what to do with it? If you have a budget, then you have more control over your financial future. Then, after you have a budget, we need to start looking at some long term goals. We need to make sure that we have a retirement plan up front. No one wants to work forever, no matter how much they love their job. And also, the reality is, even if you do want to work forever, eventually your body might tell you have to slow down. So, a retirement plan is something that you need to think about whether you are 20 or 60. We also need to make sure that we're looking at our investments. Whether we are saving for a house, a child's education, or retirement, we have to make sure that our money is making money off of itself. And there's great investments out there and there are poor investments out there. There's also a lot of investments that maybe are suitable for me, but aren't suitable for my neighbor. Investments can get a little bit complex, and what I tell everyone is it's okay if it's not your thing. It's my thing. That's why I have a career. Educating the youth of tomorrow is for people like you. I would be bad at that. Reach out, get help on investments because the wrong investments can have a really, really bad impact on your financial future. We also need to talk about insurance and risk management, whether it's homeowners insurance, health insurance, life insurance, all these things that could go wrong. We have to make sure that we are properly protected. We could be doing everything correctly and then a disability happens. And if we don't have the right insurance, it can completely derail a plan. We also need to talk about taxes and an estate plan. One thing that really kills people during retirement are taxes. And one thing that is very stressful on a family is when there isn't a proper estate plan built up. We're going to talk a little bit about both of those things later in our presentation today. Well, let's start with setting goals. So, my first piece of homework for everyone after this meeting is to write down your few major financial goals. Begin by making a list of your priorities in the next few years, and then rank your priorities by how important they are to you and list the time frame in which you would like to accomplish them. For example, a $10,000 dream vacation may be 10 years away, but slightly less important than the $1 million retirement nest egg you need in 25 years. Next, determine what funds will be needed to reach these objectives over the selected period of time. What we need to do is start separating our urgent goals from our less important goals and start thinking about the time frame we have to reach different milestones. You should not be invested the same way in your retirement account as you are in an account that is meant to fund a college education because there are two different timelines and two different goals. Emergency reserves, short term insurances, they are important today, but longer term goals can be equally as important, and all three buckets always need to be filling up. Risk management, the cornerstone of a sound financial program. One of the big gaps that we see in many financial plans is a lack of managing risk. And risk management means protecting your finances against unexpected future events. And in financial terms, this means insurance. Your financial plan is one where you are self insuring against the risks of poor health, liability, asset loss, death, and disability. And it does not make sense usually to bear the costs of these risks on your own. Insurance means you transfer that risk to a third party. The first is we need to make sure we have the proper property, casualty, and liability protection. Lots of times people do not have umbrella policies to cover their personal liabilities, and that's something we need to talk about whether or not you need to reach out to your homeowner's insurance company and see if that's necessary for you. We also don't want to go without health insurance. We find that we speak to a lot of new adult children of our clients who are turning 26 and about to lose their parents' health insurance. And we have to talk about what is the plan because we cannot go without health insurance. And then where we see the biggest gap is life, disability, and long term care insurance. And the reason that this is in bold is because people get confused the differences between the three. So we're going to talk to you about them today. Life insurance is used in the event that someone dies. Often what happens is all of a sudden there's an income removed from the household, but the expenses don't automatically get cut in half. We have to make sure that if we lose our income because we pass away, the people who are dependent on our income have a way to recoup that so that they don't lose their home, so that they can still fund future education, so that we have all of our needs met. Disability insurance is what we use in the event that we are no longer able to work because of a disability. Studies show that just over 1 in 4 of today's 20-year-olds will become disabled before reaching 67. Even if you have no financial dependence, consider protecting yourself with disability insurance. Disability income insurance can help replace your income if you get sick or hurt or just unable to work. And according to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, 1 out of every 7 workers will suffer a 5 year or longer period of disability before the age of 65. Long term care insurance is meant to protect you in your old age. 48% of people turning age 65 will need some type of paid long term care services in their lifetime, and we don't want to drain everything that we worked for over our lives by not being properly insured. The one unfortunate thing about New York State is long term care insurance can become very expensive. So typically, you want to look into insurance riders on life insurance when it comes to long term care. That is something I can help you with. There's a lot of different insurance out there. Some of it's very expensive, some's very affordable. You have to pick out what is suitable for you. Now, let's talk investment strategies. So, insurance is all about protecting our assets, investment is all about growing our assets. And what we need to talk about is risk tolerance. Taking a measured degree of risk with money in pursuit of higher returns over a long period of time. That is what investing is. But some people aren't willing to take on too much risk. Risk here means level of volatility or uncertainty in how a particular investment will perform. We all hear stories about the stock market going up day in and day out and then going down the next month. And we want to make sure that we're not staying up late at night worrying about our investments. We need to be invested in a way that we are comfortable with and in a way that aligns with our goals and time horizon. When it comes to risk tolerance, you need to ask yourself, am I risk adverse, risk tolerant, or a risk taker? And do I have the correct timeline to justify that? When it comes to high risk individuals, usually they are people with a longer time horizon. When I meet with a 22-year-old opening up a retirement account and they want to be a moderate investor, we have to have a conversation about how that might not be suitable for them because they have such a long time horizon. But then sometimes you meet with someone who is knocking on the door of retirement and they are in a very high risk portfolio and they no longer have time to wait out the ups and downs in the market. So we need to pull back on their risk so that they don't see a big slump in their account value right before they retire. When it comes to managing investment risk, the first thing we always talk about is diversity. We can't put all of our eggs in one basket. I'm from the Rochester area, and I'm not sure how familiar the people on this call are with Kodak, but it used to be kind of the sweetheart of the area, and a lot of people were heavily invested in Kodak. Then Kodak came over rough times, and people who were heavily invested in it lost their shirt. We do not want all of our investments in one company. We need to touch lots of different parts of the market so that even if we are an aggressive investor, even if we are mostly in stock, we're not losing everything if one company does bad. And that means we need to be properly allocated in any type of investment account we have, whether it's a 529 plan saving for a child's education, a brokerage saving for a future home, or your retirement accounts. You do not need to become an expert on asset allocation. That's what people like me are for. Just know you need to build your portfolio with a variety of assets. And if you look at your portfolio and you're in one mutual fund, it's probably time to meet with somebody. Dollar cost averaging has become very, very popular over the years. And dollar cost averaging is a way to pull back on market risk by consistently investing in the market. And the easiest way to do that is actually through your employer sponsored retirement accounts, because what happens is just money comes out of every single paycheck. And if money is coming out of every single paycheck to save for retirement, that means it's going into market in the market at different times of the year consistently. So whether the market is up or the market is down, you are buying in. And over a period of time, a long period of time, you will buy in at an average cost rather than risking always buying in when the market is up. People ask us often, how do we reduce our tax liability when it comes to investing? And there are three main ways to do that. The first is municipal bonds can be very, very tax advantaged. People will sometimes use these when it comes to saving for a child's education, but you should definitely meet with a financial professional before purchasing municipal bonds because they can get a little bit complicated. And because depending on the type of municipal bond you're purchasing and where it originated from, not always as tax advantage as people think it is. There's also tax deferred annuities. This shelters money from capital gains when you are not retired. Just remember, if someone is going to put you in a tax deferred annuity, you are making that a retirement fund now. So you can't access it until you are 59 and a half. And then there's also qualified retirement plans where we shield some money from the IRS while that money is invested and growing. You'll see that with IRAs, Roth IRAs, as well as whatever your employer sponsored retirement plan is. For most people on this call, that would come in the form of a 403B because you are a public school employee, but a few of you might also have access to a 457. And this next chart is just to show the power of tax deferral, of not having to always pay taxes up front. Let's assume $50,000 was left to accumulate over 30 years. at a hypothetical rate of return of 8%. And let's assume that this investor is in the 24% tax bracket. After 10 years, if this money was not tax sheltered, it would be worth around $87,535. But in a vehicle that is tax sheltered, like your employer sponsored retirement account, that principal would have accumulated to $107,950,000. Taxes really eat away at our investments, and we want to make sure that we are properly shielding ourselves. When it comes to retirement accounts, there are two different ways you can save. The first is a pre-tax retirement account, and with a pre-tax account, money comes out of your check income tax free. It grows tax deferred. And then when you retire and you pull money out of the account, that is when you pay your taxes. The second way you can save for retirement is a Roth account. With a Roth account, you pay your income tax today. It grows and is invested tax deferred. And then when you retire, you don't owe taxes on that money. This is the most common way for people to shelter their money from taxes. And those retirement accounts are what we dig into when inflation starts eating away at the buying power of our pension and at Social Security. I tell everyone, view your pension as a flat line. Pretend it's not going to keep up with inflation at all, because in reality it will not. Social Security usually keeps up with about 50% of the rate of inflation. So although you might not touch your retirement accounts in the first few years of retirement, we're going to need them in the later years. I know I've talked about this before, but it's a very important point. We need to remember that if we consistently save over a long period of time, even modest savings, it can do a lot for us in the future. And if you're confused as to how much you should be saving or what type of account you should be saving in, please reach out to me. It's what I do for a living. I love talking to people about it. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone needs to be saving a different amount in a different way, and that's okay. As far as estate planning goes, estate planning is a plan that addresses who, when, and how your assets are distributed after you pass away. And typically, the way people do an estate plan is through a will. Living in New York State, you automatically have a will through the state, but it's very, very general. If you have minor children, you definitely need a will. If you have property, you likely need a will. If you've accumulated any type of significant assets, you need a will. Meeting with an attorney over the summer when things are a little bit slower and getting a will set up is very, very painless. People get stressed out by it, but wills are not difficult things for attorneys to do, and they are excited when they get people coming in wanting to do the will. I know I covered a lot of very, very broad topics today, but I appreciate your time listening to the sound of my voice. I would love to meet all of you and answer any questions you have about any of these topics. All of my information is on the screen. Feel free to email or call me. And the QR code there should link to my calendar if I set it up correctly. Fingers crossed. Most of the time it works just fine. Anyone who is a member of Zanies is welcome to put time on my calendar at any time. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Emmy. It looks like we don't have any questions at this time. I just want to reiterate to those of you who are asking about the healthcare in retirement webinar. If you would like to attend a webinar sooner than October 6th or meet with separately with an Equitable representative, you can please send me an email at afluger@saneys.org, and the spelling of my name is in the webinar chat. It's APFLUGER@saneys.org. We will be posting a recording of this webinar on the Saneys website next week sometime. And thanks again, Emmy, and have a great weekend, everyone.